is. Well, Emeka Akabogu joins us now. He's counsel for NMASA. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, yeah, just take us through this, because over the weekend, when the news broke that NMASA was said to have blocked the Bonny Channel on Friday in a bid to extract levies from NLNG. Ever since then, it's been going back and forth where NLNG says, look, these levies they want to collect, it's illegal, it's not the right way to go about it. It all just keep going back and forth. But what was the crux of the matter, by the way?
Well, thank you very much. Essentially, the legislation which sets up NMASA gives NMASA the right to collect 3% on the gross freight of every international inbound and outbound vessel laden with cargo. And this includes all vessels operating within the Nigerian waters, including NLNG vessels. Now, traditionally, when NLNG was set up, NLNG claims that through its establishing legislation, it is exempt from all taxes, duties, levies, or any charges of any kind leviable in Nigeria.
Is that wrong?
That's wrong. That's wrong. As of today, that is wrong.
Why do you say so?
Because at the time NLNG was set up, the establishing legislation was passed in 1989 and amended in 1993. There was probably a reason for that, for the purpose of what they call pioneer status in law, the kind of a status which was granted MTN and the likes when they just came in. And that was supposed to last for a maximum period of 10 years. Indeed, the provision of the NLNG legislation particularly provides that in the event that the price of gas reaches a certain threshold within a 5-year period, that provision will no longer apply. And that threshold occurred in 2004, after NLNG started lifted its first cargo in 1999. So by 2004, that threshold of above $3 per metric British thermal unit of gas was achieved. And since then, NLNG has been a very successful company. NLNG, indeed, today, statistically, is the most successful company in Nigeria by virtue of profits and balance sheets. So it's quite disturbing that such a successful company, driven through natural resources of Nigeria, is flying in the face of the existing established legislation guiding operations in Nigeria. So that's the background to what has happened. At some point, there was a discussion between both parties, and the essence was to try to reach some amicable settlements.
When was this?
This was from 2007. From 2007 leading to 2009, and NLNG essentially was of the position that it will not pay because of the establishing legislation, which was not supported by the existing legislation of NMASA. The matter was taken to court at some point to get the court to give a declaration on the two legislation, but for some reason the matter really wasn't adjudicated by the courts.
Not that you pulled out, NMASA pulled the matter out of court?
At some point, NMASA had to withdraw the matter from the court because it was not proceeding. It was not proceeding at all, and NMASA essentially decided to enforce the provisions of its existing legislation.
Isn't that tantamount to taking the laws into their hands?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There's an existing legislation. It's very important to note that there's an existing legislation passed in 2007, which is about 15 years after, in fact, 18 years after the NLNG Act, which is being relied on NLNG, was passed. Okay? So the existing legislation is non-discriminatory as to the types of organizations or ships which are supposed to pay this levy.
Yeah, but don't you think that, I mean, there was a fantastic opportunity to resolve this matter once and for all when the matter was in court? But
NLNG very, very intelligently did not want to utilize that opportunity.
Really?
Yes. That's a matter which was very clear in court. NLNG did not really utilize that opportunity.
Yeah, but if the matter had not pulled the case out of court, would they have had any option than to respond to the matter?
They failed to respond to the matter. But the crucial thing is...
But they were in courts at that time with you, with NMASA.
Yes, they were in court on paper. NLNG even refused to be served. NLNG refused to accept service papers.
But you can always get substitute service.
No. In this case, they refused to accept any type of service. So NMASA, what NMASA did at the point was very simple. Okay, NMASA looked at its existing legislation, and on the strength of the existing legislation, no organization in Nigeria is above the law. That's the crucial thing. Even if the organization is mouthing the rule of law by purporting to rely on those on legal provisions to resile from its responsibilities, no such organization is above the law. It's been interesting to note one thing. The same NLNG is paying taxes to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Okay? So what it does is that it picks and chooses which laws it wants to respect and which ones it doesn't want to respect.
Is that the case, or they just had disagreements with that?
No, that's the case.
Now that the matter is, eventually, if they sort it out, they'll pay. Why not? Isn't that the way it's going to be?
No, the point is, there is an existing legislation which should be obeyed. If you do have issues with the legislation, okay, the path you should take is to try to resolve it, go to court and resolve it using legal means. And the NLNG did not do that. No. Indeed, it was NMASA that took the step to try to get a judicial interpretation of this very situation. And NLNG refused to cooperate with that
You know why it would be so difficult for anyone to believe that NLNG would deliberately not pay such levies, because according to NMASA they call it huge unpaid levies over time, is because they also pay taxes. If they pay to FIRS, it means, well, they are a law-abiding organization. So why did they choose not to pay the levies, well, on them by NMASA? It could be an issue of law again. If they say, well, the act setting up NLNG doesn't make them, well, should I say, susceptible to that law, the act rather setting up NMASA, isn't that a big point? Because they also have their legal team, just like NMASA has you.
It is a big point, subject to compliance with existing legislation at the time. Okay? NLNG did not set up paying taxes to the Federal Inland Revenue Service on the basis of that same law. NLNG never paid any taxes to the federal government of Nigeria until years after it was established, on the basis of the achievements of the thresholds which were set out in the very law that they relied on. Having achieved that threshold, today, which is more than 14, 15 years after its first cargo was lifted, it now decides to pick and choose which laws of Nigeria to respect and which not to respect.
But has NMASA, at any point in time prior to this time, ever brought up these infractions or alleged infractions to NMASA?
To NLNG?
Sorry, to NLNG, yes.
Absolutely. As I said, there have been discussions. There have even been interventions by the existing government at various times. Okay? The Office of the Head of State, as far back as 1997, made certain interventions, okay, and gave directives. The Office of the Ministry of Transport made very clear interventions in 2007 and gave directives for the collection of these levies.
There was, I think, a recent meeting between the groups and the NSA, isn't it?
I think that is subsequent to the events of last weekend, and I am made to understand that there's supposed to be a meeting sometime later this week.
Yeah.
It's a little curious because you said that they gave directives. So when they did give the directives, then did they pay the levies at that time?
They did not.
So in spite of the directives, the NLNG refused to pay the duties that it was supposed to pay.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what has happened is that over the years, NLNG is a very strong company. It's also a very important company for Nigeria, but it is a private company. It's very important for us to note that NLNG is a private company. It's a joint venture company set up by several international oil companies in conjunction with the NMPC. And significantly, this NLNG is the only joint venture in which the private sector has a larger shareholding than the government. Okay? So it's important to know that NLNG is a private company, susceptible and subject to the laws of Nigeria. So despite several directives which have been given in the past, it has not made any moves to do this. And that's because maybe in the past NMASA has not decided to absolutely enforce the laws as it is. So the events of the last weekend represent the very first time NMASA is taking very firm measures towards enforcement of the law and of the preceding directives.
But you have people who think that, pardon me, you have people who think that that's not the right way to actually go about it, because putting that ship to blockade was, some actually describe it as being a crude way to go about it, because there's either arbitration or you go to court or you sit down and talk about this.
No, with all due respect, the law provides measures and procedures for the purpose of enforcement of the legislation.
Such as blocking the vessels?
Such as detention of breaching vessels. Okay? The NLNG vessels were detained. And you see, NMASA is a regulatory body governing international maritime guidelines of the IMO and Nigeria's port, state and flag state responsibilities. And NMASA's powers are clearly stated in the Act, which include under Section 23, the power to stop any vessel which is in breach of its regulations. It's an absolute clear power which it exercises on a routine basis. On a routine basis. All the ships typically which are in breach do not complain. Indeed, I must tell you that NLNG is one of the very few companies, if not the only company, which is looking Nigeria in the face and saying that it wants to pay the law. And the implication is, it's important that we realize the implication of these kind of steps. What happens when companies decide that they are too powerful to obey the laws of the land is that it gives incentive to other companies of the same level to begin to question their compliance with the laws when other companies are not. And these are facts which are dangerous to the economy of the country, and indeed issues relating to governance as a whole. So it's important that these matters are put in perspective.
I'm happy you just talked about the economic issue, which some would say, away from the economic loss that this will bring to the country. Don't you think that this kind of move would also affect foreign direct investment to Nigeria? Because you just highlighted, if you look at it, NNPC has 49% of NLNG, while Shell 25%, Total 15% ENI. So that's a big joint venture. If we go, the we here now is NMASA. If NMASA chooses to block these vessels from coming in, don't you think that this definitely will affect the relationship with our foreign partners?
It won't.
And some are already talking about gas scarcity if this persists.
I believe that's a real distraction. Okay, it's a distraction which is strategic on the part of NLNG. That allegation, indeed it is.